The Hadza people do not have schools that teach survival. Yet, across the vast savanna of Tanzania, almost every skill needed to stay alive is passed down each day through hunting trips, food gathering, and learning how to read the natural world around them. What makes this remarkable is that many things that seem small or insignificant to us become extremely important knowledge for the Hadza. A single mistake in reading a track, choosing a direction, or missing a food source can make the entire day much harder. A hunting day begins with one man walking ahead, lowering his body close to the ground while constantly observing the earth beneath him. Behind him, the others keep their distance and follow the exact direction he leads. In Hadza hunting culture, the lead hunter almost acts as the reader of the path for the entire group. He must recognize whether footprints are fresh or old, determine the animal's direction, and understand whether he's running fast or had only recently crossed the area. What stands out is that these skills do not come from theory. They come from living in that environment for an incredibly long time. The Hadza do not look at the ground as an ordinary surface. To them, it is more like a place where information is stored. The chase begins when they discover fresh tracks from a large wild boar. The moment the arrow is released, the whole group quickly speeds up and follows after it. Some stumble while rushing across rough ground or low thorny bushes, but almost immediately they get back up and continue running. This shows that Hadza hunting is far from easy, despite what many people imagine. The savanna is filled with rocks, sharp thorns, and unstable terrain. Yet they are willing to pursue prey for hours because they understand that endurance is often what decides the final outcome. After many hours of following tracks and reading the animal's movements, they finally catch the large boar. The group carries the animal back together, then quickly builds a large fire to roast the meat. Interestingly, the time spent waiting for the meat to cook also becomes a moment for everyone to sit together, talk, laugh, and drink water together. For the Hadza, the hunt does not end simply with obtaining food. It is also a time for the community to reconnect after many hours moving together across the savanna. That is why, in their way of life, going through something together often matters just as much as the final result. Even the hunting dogs that join the hunt receive a share of the meat. This reflects a very unique value in the way the Hadza view the relationship between humans and animals. The dogs are not simply hunting tools. They are true companions during long hunts across the savanna, helping detect tracks, chase prey, and warn of danger. So giving food to the dogs is not an act of kindness. It is recognition of the role they played throughout the hunt. After the meal, a few people continue searching for honey in areas near the savanna. For the Hadza, honey is not simply a delicious food. It is an extremely important source of energy for a community that spends nearly the entire day walking, climbing, tracking, and hunting. Because of that, each hive for the Hadza is not just food, but the result of an enormous process of tireless labor within nature itself. They understand bee behavior extremely well, which seasons produce hives with more honey, what types of tree trunks bees prefer for nesting, and what time is safer for harvesting honey. These details may sound small, but in reality, They are the result of years upon years of continuous observation of the environment. For the Hadza, nature is not simply something around them. It is more like a system they must understand and read every single day in order to survive. When they return to camp, the women begin cooking the white flour mixture that had already been finely prepared earlier. They stir it steadily over the fire until the mixture slowly thickens into a large mass. This dish plays a role quite similar to rice in many other cultures, not elaborate, but essential for maintaining stable energy for the whole community. This way of living creates an especially strong sense of community among the Hadza. They rarely remain separated from one another for too long. They hunt together, build shelters together, cook together, and end the day together around the fire. Other moments also reveal the Hadza's remarkable survival knowledge through the way they use baobab trees. These giant trunks do not only provide fruit for food. Many hollow trees also become temporary shelters during heavy rain, places to escape the extreme heat of the savanna, or hiding spots when facing dangerous animals. What is fascinating is that the Hadza know exactly which trees are safe enough to enter, which ones have become dangerously rotten, and which areas are more likely to attract predators at night. This is the kind of knowledge that is almost impossible to learn quickly through only a few observations. It comes from living in that environment long enough to understand how nature works through each season and each moment of the day. In a world that grows increasingly dependent on technology and modern systems, the Hadza continue to preserve a very different kind of knowledge shaped through real experience, through living directly with nature, and through the bonds shared by an entire community across generations. If communities like the Hadza disappear one day, what vanishes may not only be a tribe, but an entire treasury of ancient survival knowledge that the modern world would struggle to recover again. The Hadza people own very little in the way the modern world usually considers important. They do not have tall houses, large possessions, or tightly packed daily schedules. Yet what makes them remarkable is that in the dry and scorching savanna of Tanzania, they still maintain a way of life where almost every activity remains directly connected to nature and the community around them. The hunt does not begin with everyone immediately rushing into the bush looking for prey. They spend a long time standing in an open area, carefully observing the surroundings before separating into smaller lines to move forward. The Hadza do not travel as one loud, crowded group. They spread themselves apart while walking, constantly watching for tiny signs left behind on the ground. At times, the entire group suddenly changes direction simply because one person notices footprints only partially covered by a fresh layer of dust. That tells them the animal passed through not long ago. For the Hadza, the hunt does not begin when they finally see the prey. It begins with piecing together small signs from the environment itself. The man walking in front slowly lowers his body and begins moving more carefully. The people behind him barely speak, yet they instinctively understand how much distance to keep so the animal does not become alert and disappear. What is fascinating about this coordination is that it does not rely on spoken commands. It comes from living and hunting together for so long. The moment the arrow is released, the silence suddenly breaks apart. The antelope immediately bursts through the dry bushes, while the entire group shifts into a completely different state, running, observing, and constantly tracking its direction. What stands out is that the Hadza do not try to outrun the animal in short bursts of speed. They hunt through endurance. In the vast and scorching savanna, humans sometimes hold an advantage over many animals through the ability to keep moving for long periods of time. That is why their hunts feel more like a process of slowly exhausting the prey, rather than ending things quickly. They continuously reread fresh footprints, watch the direction where grass has been pressed down, and predict where the animal might suddenly change course, so they do not lose the trail. After a long pursuit, the antelope finally collapses. The whole group works together to carry the animal into an open area in the middle of the savanna. Interestingly, after such a tense hunt, the atmosphere suddenly becomes very light and relaxed. They sit down to rest, sing happily, and talk together right there in the open field. It feels as though, for the Hadza, joy does not come from owning the prey. It comes from the experience of going through the hunt together. That is what gives their way of life such a strong sense of community. The success of the day is almost always connected to the group rather than the individual. Afterward, they build a fire and roast the meat right there on the spot. Everyone sits around the flames, passing pieces of meat from hand to hand while eating together in the middle of the savanna. What stands out is that there are almost no complicated rituals surrounding the meal. Yet that simplicity somehow makes the feeling of connection even stronger. No one eats alone, and there is no idea that the best portion belongs to only one person. Besides hunted meat, they also eat many kinds of wild fruits to restore energy while traveling. The Hadza understand very well which fruits contain more water, and which ones help the body endure the heat of the savanna. These pieces of knowledge may sound small, but in reality, they are extremely important for a community that spends nearly the entire day walking and moving. Not every day brings a successful hunt. On days when no prey is found, they dig roots from the ground to eat instead. Digging sticks are used to break through the hard, dry soil until the roots appear underneath. They are then roasted directly over hot coals and eaten right there on the spot. What is especially interesting is that the Hadza do not see eating roots instead of meat as failure. For them, survival is not about always having the perfect meal. It is about adapting to whatever nature allows on that particular day. Perhaps that is why their lives carry far less pressure. They do not try to completely control nature. Instead, they learn how to live alongside its changes. When they return to camp, some of the men continue repairing the arrows used during the day. They straighten the shafts, replace sharpened tips, or tighten loose bindings. For the Hadza, the bow and arrow are not simply hunting tools. They are almost like an extension of the survival knowledge each man must learn to maintain himself. What makes this even more remarkable is that they make almost everything entirely by hand. There are no factories and no specialized repair shops. If a weapon breaks, they repair it themselves. If they need materials, they search for them directly in nature. Perhaps that is why the life of the Hadza always feels incredibly free. Not because they live with less, but because their rhythm of life is not stretched thin by endless pressure to own more or compete constantly, like much of modern society today. And perhaps the most remarkable thing is this: even without tall houses, great wealth, or modern